Welcome to the Lazaro Lab. I'm Ryan Lazaro.
And I'm Matt Lazaro, and we have a gong for you today. That concludes our show. No, no. Today, we're going to talk to you about the best of gluten-free.
The Oreos are good now.
Oh my gosh, yes, they are. The gluten-free Oreos are pretty awesome. No. So gluten-free is more or less what would you call it? It's kind of a fad to a degree.
For many, unless you actually have a food sensitivity to it.
Yeah, or an actual allergy.
Yeah.
Right? And there is a certain percentage of the population that legitimately has an allergy to it, but that has some pretty extreme side effects and it's pretty detrimental towards their health. You know, in our case, if you already listened to what episode was that? I don't know. Something earlier.
I think episode 3.
3. Yeah, we talked about our food sensitivities. And to further dive into that, it's important to understand that the way we were talking about our food sensitivities, geez, I can't talk, is not that we needed lab work to tell us, but more specific that it was an observation with removing certain things out of our diet and then certain things improved. Mm-hmm. So it was more anecdotal, right? It's not like it was like, hey, this lab said I'm allergic to gluten, because it definitely didn't.
Yeah, it was like, oh, we eliminated pizza, bread.
Well, things that have wheat in them, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, conveniently, the things that have wheat in them tend to be breads, anything that is baked, practically.
Just most processed, highly accessible foods.
Yeah.
I mean, for a while there, as far as eating habits wise, I was doing great because I didn't know about gluten-free pasta, gluten-free bread, gluten-free Oreos,
Gluten-free pizza.
Yeah, everything. So
gluten-free cake,
yeah,
gluten-free
you can
pie.
go down a slippery slope being gluten-free. So don't, you do hear people like, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to go gluten-free.
Well, let's elaborate on why people can lose weight going gluten-free. So even with no legitimacy behind removing gluten out of their diet, most people don't even know what it is. But it's very possible to lose weight because if the bulk of your calories were made up of bread products, which is very common,
bread,
right?
Pasta.
Well, let's look at it this way. What's a common thing people eat in the morning? Pastries, right? Toast, Pop-Tarts, like Hot Pockets or breakfast pockets or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Right? Like
a snack on crackers and cheese, crackers and peanut butter, stuff like that.
Yeah, so those things are super dense. And then if you replace them with not, just regular old food that doesn't have any refinement to it, then you're decreasing your total calories instantly.
Yeah.
And
you're limited to less variety of carbohydrates.
Oh yeah, significant. I mean, because if you just ate rice and potatoes, the likelihood that you're going to eat too much rice and potatoes is more likely to eat less of that than it is to eat more
I noticed
bread products.
More fuller when I do consume rice and potatoes as opposed to when I have pasta. I just keep going and going and going and going.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like I get full on any type of pasta.
I would usually add rice to my pasta.
Or when you're eating pasta, you eat it with bread.
Yeah.
Remember how we make sandwiches when we were kids with the what kind of bread did we always have? We always had that. I don't remember what brand that was, but we had it a lot though. Like every time we ate pasta, we ate it with bread, and we're eating like half
that, or we usually do French bread.
French bread, yeah. What was it? Or sourdough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nonetheless, when you start removing foods out of your or removing specific types of ingredients per se, it does become easier to spontaneously remove a ton of calories that will allow weight loss to start.
Until you start substituting it with the gluten-free items that are ending up, they're smaller.
They are actually.
With the equivalent amount of
they're more condensed,
carbohydrates. Yeah.
Right?
You get like a normal piece of bread, And that's, I don't know, you say 100 calories, but then you'll have a little
gluten-free
bread.
So you eat twice as much.
120.
So you'll literally eat twice as
Yeah.
much, right? But, you know, for those who are actually gluten intolerant and legitimately have these actual sensitivities, it is extremely important not to have it.
Yeah, I mean, some people experience inflammation, they feel swollen, and it's not the pump kind of swollen. It's
It's a bad swollen in
bad
the stomach.
swollen inflammation in your gut.
Well, it's you know, specifically when you have a terrible reaction to it, it's actually I believe that's Crohn's, right? Let me I don't know why I can't remember. Yeah. So Crohn's, let's look this up. I think I might be mixing this up. Oh, celiac, right? Celiac disease. So, but that's the thing. Like, what happens to them when they're exposed to it is literally the intestine starts to deteriorate because
Is that the one that's the autoimmune?
yeah, they're all autoimmune. So anytime you have an allergic reaction, it is always autoimmune. It's a heightened type of immune
Sensitivity,
response.
yeah.
To something. But then there's people that notice it when they're suffering from IBS or ulcerative colitis and then also specifically celiac disease or even Crohn's or colitis, in other words. It could be beneficial in those circumstances, but I wouldn't go just assuming that you have those issues. I would definitely go and see medical help to get diagnosed. But if you are, and what we've noticed with some people, and what I've noticed with some clients, when they've removed those things out of their diet, they make this association thinking that it was the gluten that was the actual issue.
It's still the calories.
Generally, yeah. So, if you really think about it, like if someone was used to eating 1,000 calories at dinner every day, and easy, of higher refined foods, right?
Yeah.
So these foods, the absorbability of them, we have the one thing that we have to take into consideration when it comes to calories. I may speak in terms of like calories are the only thing that matters, which to a minor extent it does. Well, to a major extent too. But there's also calorie absorbability. And so you absorb more of the calories when you consume things that are more refined because it has less of it's easier to absorb all of it, calorically speaking. So if you consume, let's say, almonds, raw almonds, there's a certain amount of the almond that you don't absorb, which is the fiber. You're not going to have you're not going to be able to absorb it anyways. The body will get rid of it. And so you're not absorbing 160 calories per ounce. It could be 30% less possibly. And then when people have digestive issues, they may have absorption issues, but then they may have over absorption issues too, from what I've seen. So this is all like super more, in way digging into the deep end of things. But you don't have to go all the way down the rabbit hole to just feel better.
Yeah. And I think that's one other thing people notice a difference with is if they had a sensitivity to it, was mentally feeling better as well.
Yeah. Well, in some people, here's the thing: is it the gluten that was the issue, or was it the high sugar levels?
Yeah.
Right. So when your sugar levels or your glucose levels are too high. Well, that is something that does spike actually. With enough of one thing in your system, it's going to spike your glucose, followed by an insulin.
By how much percent?
No, we're not. No, we're not doing that. but overall, that's the thing. There are some observations in studies on sugar levels where people are consuming things like, let's say, cookies and are noticing a significant spike in glucose. And sometimes when your glucose is running higher, you're going to be feeling brain fog. And what I mean by that is when your glucose is running higher consistently, right? So you're consistently elevating it, and you may not be diabetic, but you may be working your way towards that.
Yeah. So what about for people that don't eat for long periods of time and then do consume large meals and they have that crash afterwards?
Yeah, well, I mean that's the thing. It's like so you're basically just tapping into their reserves for a long time throughout the day,
And boom.
and then they're just adding this ginormous surplus, and generally people are going to want to overeat. And depending on what food they're allowing themselves to eat, they're just going to eat
And
an abundance of
usually
everything.
it's overindulging to the point where they're like so full they can't breathe.
And you know who I observe this in the most? People who practice intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Because they always
fit in X amount of calories in a time frame.
Well, they always tell me this. They're like, well, I've been fasting, and then I just, then I finally just eat, and they just gorge themselves with food rather than having a strategy behind any of it. But that's the thing. It's like, it's one thing or one method of partitioning out your calories that goes awry, right? And so when I try to explain to people sometimes, especially if they choose to do intermittent fasting or some type of time restrictions on their food, is we have to have total context of what's going on. Some individual, like, okay, so myself, I've been doing that forever, even before it was a thing, simply because I've always not liked how I felt eating in the morning. I'm just never been a breakfast person. So even I'm fasted all the way up until the point of training, and then after we're training, I consume protein. In that case, it actually is relevant because I haven't had food in 16 to 18 hours.
Yeah.
But in most instances, nutrition timing isn't that relevant. But and then obviously we eat. So my only point in saying that is like I feel fine doing it, and then I also have a strategy of how much I'm going to eat when I decide to eat.
Yeah. So what other reactions or responses do people have that may be gluten intolerant?
I mean, a lot of it, some of it for some people, it is neurological, right? So there is an actual brain fog issue. Some people do have more inflammation going on, and they're seeing that, and so aside from they're seeing that, and then there's just not a ton of research on it. There's enough to know that there may be a larger percentage of the population that might have an issue with it. But like I said, one of the complicated things is we don't really know if it's just most of those people are generally eating too much. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But in the instance when we're dealing with fitness people, some of those circumstances are a little different because we can narrow it down. But also some of them may just have poor regulation of sugar levels anyways, maybe due to poor food quality choices and insufficient recovery. So I've had clients who swore up and down they were intolerant to gluten, even after being told that they weren't, after getting labs and all of that. They swore up and down, but it was simply a lack of recovery, a lack of sleep, and
they were just eating too much back then.
But then they would go on these binge eating cycles almost, where it's like, they do good Monday through Friday, and then, they hit the weekend, and, they were gluten-free Monday through Friday. And then it was just...
I always feel horrible Monday.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's like, well, you're drinking beer, and some of them do have things, either gluten in them or gluten-like substances.
Yeah.
And along with that, whether it's, just burgers, fries, well, not the fries.
I think obviously. A lot of people don't realize how common it is of an ingredient to be added to foods. Sauces, condiments, TV dinners.
Yep.
Almost every single one of those have some form of wheat.
Yeah. Well, like gravy, you have to add it to thicken it up, right? And then in soy sauce, it's one of the binders.
Yeah.
They literally use wheat gluten in it. But for the people that, there's I would say that there's a much large part of the population that is perfectly fine with it.
Yeah.
And I would even argue that my potential issues and your potential issues aren't actual legitimate sensitivities. It's more related to just unregulated inflammation due to other shit that we do. Because I have, under certain circumstances, eaten things on accident, and that was fine.
What makes you think your problem is my problem? We're not. It's not like we're brothers.
I may be just speculating here, but we might share a lot of genes that are similar, right? So, what are you doing?
Not wearing jeans.
You better be wearing pants. Don't stand up. So, but that's the thing, that guys, like the one thing, if anything, to take away in this whole talk of gluten-free is that in most circumstances, most people, just based on the raw data, are not going to be sensitive to it, right? And a lot of times I have people talking about another thing that's been making a new comeback, and it's this stupid what's it called, blood type diet that came out like in the 80s or 90s or something like that. And people are like, well, I'm type A, so I should eat this, or I'm type B, so I should eat that. There's absolutely no legitimacy behind there's like
that's based on restricting certain food groups as well, right?
Yeah, so here, I'll pull it up, watch. It's crazy. So one of
I don't
them,
even know what blood type I am.
I don't know either. We're probably O. So with the blood type diet, their whole thing is here it is, I found it. They're almost implying that your body has a potential allergic response to these things.
And this is based on blood work?
No, this is based on your blood type. So it gets more funny, actually, but let's get through this. So like type O, which is probably the majority of the population, is supposed to eat lean, organic, grass-fed meat. So in other words, beef, right? Beef, fish, flaxseed oil, olive oil, seaweeds, onions, garlic, pineapple, turmeric, green tea, and stuff like that. Actually, this doesn't look like the same one I was thinking of. Maybe it is, actually. There's a more in-depth. Yeah, so basically they're implying you should eat meat, low carb, protein rich, perform vigorous aerobic exercise. It's really funny.
So then one other blood type should not then.
Yeah, so they're implying. So let's just look at this, right?
Your
Type
weak
A.
blood.
Type A supposedly is supposed to be vegetarian for whatever
Now,
reason.
do they regulate this as far as toward performance of an individual? Like, hey, these people are going to be better athletes for this performance.
Well, they're implying that you should work out a certain way and you should eat a certain way based on whatever blood type you are, which is silly, and we'll get into more of that. So the funny thing is like they're saying that you can, you deal with stress with meditating, performing gentle exercises. So it's like vegetarians that should do yoga, basically, is what they're saying. And it's also saying like if you don't do that, you're going to develop heart disease and cancer and die. Well, funny thing is, what are the top 3 things that kill every single person?
Yeah,
Heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. I mean, or
pretty
Alzheimer's.
most common. Yeah.
Well, that's literally everyone eventually dies of that. Like even when you supposedly die of old age, you're usually dying of heart failure.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think
You know what I mean?
just give out. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like everyone's fucking dying of the same thing. Like it's either you're going to die of it early or late. That's it. Like it's not, And then now we have some interesting things I will get into on a completely different podcast about longevity, where they think that they can reverse some of these things so we can live till we're 200. If I look like this and I'm 100, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like crippled. Like,
what if they give you robot arms and legs
that's fine.
and, heart? So let's keep going. Blood type B is supposed to have a varied diet that includes meat and dairy products and performing exercises of walking and swimming. That's about it.
So do you feel like when people resort to these diets and they're like, I swear by it, is it because they're just following a structured regimen of change of habit?
That's exactly what it is, because if you're convinced that adhering to certain restrictions is going to work, and you're eating fewer calories than you did,
You've already
and you
changed your lifestyle to accommodate.
and you're moving more, right?
Yeah.
Like you already fixed it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
So, but the funny thing is like there's, I believe, 2 research papers that they try to use as a reference. It's terrible. Like when you read through them, it's really a stretch to make that correlation. In other words, because it's very similar to what the vegetarian community does. So they did this big study in this community of they're actually Seventh-day Adventists, the community down in SoCal. What's it called? I don't remember what it's called, but basically there's like, they have this whole community down there. And then they were like, yeah, look, we're vegetarian and we live longer. than the average person. But the funny thing is like when you actually look at the data they put out, they're not only looking at the diet. So they typically, on average, they eat fewer calories anyways. Roughly, I think they said 50% almost. So 50% less calories than the average American, which is quite a bit of a decrease. And then on top of that, they have community, they have support, they have exercise that's a part of the norm.
Yeah.
Right. So they're doing all these other things. And what that's called in the research now is called the healthy user bias. So when things are adjusted for the healthy user bias, because they weren't studying people that were smoking and eating the American diet.
Gotcha.
The standard American diet that don't move. And, they were literally observing just people that were actually trying to intentionally take care of themselves. So no shit, you're going to live longer.
Yeah. So what about, I've heard this in the past, I don't recall where people were like, your heart only has so many beats.
Oh.
And like if you eat less, you're going to live longer.
So there is some speculation on that, right? So there's only like so many billion beats in your heart, right? And when you add it up,
mine's pretty. It beats a lot when I run, so maybe I need to slow it down.
But it compensates because our heart rate's in the 40s when we sleep. That's
true. Yeah, right? So you get in better overall fitness.
It's a theory that I'm not 100% familiar with, but I've heard it enough. But what they're speculating is that animals that fast, or just mammals in general, if you starve them periodically, tend to live a little longer. But the funny thing is like, how much longer are we talking?
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather die 10 years early and be jacked and fit rather than live 10 years longer and be frail and like hungry. No, but that's what we're talking about, because they're also seeing
it's the quality of living.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, so they're saying it's like calorie restriction does lead to potentially improving these longevity markers called, one of the ones that they measure is telomeres.
So you want to starve yourself, or you want to, I don't want to eat and enjoy life, but there's a time and a place, because then that can go backwards and you can be in a really unhealthy state.
Yeah, and the extreme opposite is what people already do. Yeah. They eat too much. They eat too much. They eat way too much, too often, and don't move.
Or don't eat enough and then just have one giant sitting.
Yeah, but that's still technically eating too much. But
I think that's a big misconception when we ask people, do you eat? And they say,
I don't eat all day.
Much.
Yeah,
but they have 2 giant meals a day.
Yes, exactly.
Probably equivalent to the 4 to 6 that we would have throughout the day.
But they're also saying that they're not eating much, but they drink 700 calories of sugar in the morning with caffeine.
Yeah.
Or drinking normal, regular energy drinks that have actual sugar in it. And then they're not counting those liquid calories generally. But let's just say somebody actually isn't actually eating. So what happens when someone's consistently not eating, fasting, right? It's very common for them to move less anyways. So your total metabolic rate of what you're spending naturally is fewer. Yeah.
I mean, if I ate less, I don't want to do. I'll do less.
The days that so it's like the days that we don't bring enough food and we're just, no one wants to leave and we're just sitting there.
Yeah.
Literally, and it's just like the difference between sitting for a couple hours and working sitting down and moving around and working can be a few hundred calories.
Yeah. And that adds up.
Yeah.
I mean, cumulatively, that's a big difference.
So it's just like, what are you consistently doing? And most people don't know what they're consistently doing, which is what gets them into trouble, because they're focusing on one particular thing that they change without actually acknowledging all the other things. And so that's kind of where we end up with any type of restriction, especially, let's say, gluten-free.
And then speaking about gluten-free, I mean, I hear and see people when they see gluten-free on the package, they say, "Oh, I don't want that healthy stuff." That's the healthy stuff that don't taste good.
Yeah, That's, what's hilarious is there's been times where at family gatherings we've made gluten-free stuff and never told anybody, and everybody ate it.
Yeah,
thinking,
it's just
there's this weird concept that gluten-free is healthy, right? Yeah, no, it's only healthy for people who have issues with gluten. Well, and then what level of health are we talking? Is they're not going to have this detrimental inflammatory response after eating it because they actually have an allergy.
Yeah.
But
I just think it's because they think, oh, it's not made from the common food.
yeah,
That, hey, this is healthy, but it's like, hey, no, this is 25% more calories than what we would have been with wheat.
Yeah.
So,
but it's funny too. It's like if you start putting diet on the Spam can, you know,
yeah.
or put like diet low carb rice or something stupid like that.
I mean, they do have, what would you consider low sodium Spam, low sodium this? Like, what do you...
Well, low sodium to them is just less of whatever's in there.
Yeah.
Like that's,
But you think,
it's
is there
still
any benefit for people to be...
low sodium.
I mean, are they really... Unless everything else they had was lower sodium, was there...
Yeah, if they're eating Spam, they have other issues. Like they should be worried about other things, you know. Like not to say like we eat Spam once in a while. You know?
But I think people buy low sodium Spam and then they
Thinking they're
have
making
eggs and add salt to their eggs. So
Yeah, it's not that big of a difference. I think it's like 20% less, and so instead of 900 milligrams, it's 700 milligrams or something like that.
and then why would people be consuming less sodium?
So when people actually have legitimate kidney issues, it's important to consume less sodium than the average person.
They should not even be consuming Spam anyway then,
Exactly.
because that's not...
Yeah, if you have kidney
processed,
issues,
there's lots of
well, it's
things
just
in there.
it becomes more challenging to filter out these things, and,
Yeah.
and overloading yourself with more sodium of a processed meat like that is
Yeah.
probably not the best thing for somebody that actually has a health issue.
Yeah, no, yeah, they shouldn't be consuming that.
Well, they usually, when you have a kidney issue, you usually need a lower protein diet in general because too much protein for them,
It's hard to process.
it strains the kidneys a little more than normal, right? And so I know I've had clients who've had one kidney and then they just kind of have to keep an eye on their actual lab work. But, you know, it's just finding out what is that level where it's too much. Like it's like I would help them make little adjustments. But the funny thing is we saw correlation between them overeating.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that, you know, you shouldn't limit your protein if you have a kidney issue. You definitely should. But generally, most people don't need to restrict sodium unless they're constantly just eating a bunch of crap food.
Yeah. What about low fat food?
Well, that's the thing. Like whenever you see low fat, you end up with higher carbs.
Yeah. So
And
then
whenever
people
you
are
see
trying to
low-
avoid calories per se. And there is more calories in fat than
Yes.
carbs, but
Like low fat cheese is definitely less calories
Yeah.
than regular old cheese.
yeah. But if it's a product that contains dominant carbohydrates, then they're probably going to get more.
Like I could say these are low fat pancakes just because because you don't have to add fat. Like
Yeah.
I mean, it's just flour. I mean, you could put low fat apples.
A lot
like,
of manipulation in
It
the
is,
wording.
but that's the same thing. Like I said about gluten free. You know, it's funny. It's like someone says, "Oh, I'm going to make better choices with my food," and they just buy all the things that are low fat and gluten free, and still eat the same amount of calories of the same shitty food, and never improved anything.
Yeah. So what about, and I do this, burger and fries and a diet soda?
Well, I mean, if you're going to commit, no, no. I mean, you know, it's funny. People make fun of people that do that, and I do that too. But I'm doing it because I don't want to drink a ton of calories. So the likelihood that you're going to absorb more calories drinking soda is very high.
More likely.
Is very high. Like it's liquid sugar. Like
Yeah, and I mean, I personally don't mind the taste.
I like
if I
diet
don't have to
soda.
drink 30 grams of sugar, even though I'm eating more calories.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well, okay. You could have ate a lot more
Well,
calories.
yeah.
Yeah.
But-
You know, and that's what it comes down to. It's like, and people will always say, I hate this. They'll say, well, diet soda is worse than real soda, so you might as well. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not true. Like, where'd you get this data? You know? And it's funny, they cite, well, they don't even know what they're referencing, but people in the fitness industry will regularly cite this one study that was done on rats with aspartame. And if I recall, the amount of aspartame that the rats were eating was like 60 times the normal amount that a human would eat. So per body weight. So like
So we would have to consume like
60 times. Yeah. So they were saying, well, the rats are getting cancer. It's like, well, no shit. Like if you ate 60 times the amount of anything, you might have some issues.
Yeah.
Let alone, I wouldn't worry about cancer right away. I mean, you probably have other issues come up digestive wise.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of other red flags popping up.
Yeah, I mean, you drink enough water, what's going to happen? You're going to die. You can die of drinking too much water.
Yeah.
You know, there was this one instance where radio was it was like a radio show back in the day, and somebody was they had a contest of who can drink the most water, and this lady literally drowned herself by drinking too much water.
Oh my gosh.
Hyperhidrosis, or I don't remember exactly what happened, but yeah, you know, she won but lost. So
Lost it all to win.
yeah, that's definitely not something I want to win as a radio show. Fudge, man. But yeah, no, I mean, you hit it on the head with all these things. With in the sense, it's like a lot of it's just marketing manipulation at the end, and so it's just anything to get people not to focus on what's actually most important.
Yeah.
And that's why I always tell people, it's like, okay, you know, we prioritize how much we eat, then the quality of what we eat, and break it down into the macros. And arguably, the quality and the macros can kind of flip flop occasionally, but in that order, yeah, it's that's how it should always be.
Yeah.
If weight loss long term is the goal, if you don't need to lose weight and you want to eat better, then food quality definitely makes a difference. You know, I mean, I'm not implying that you should just portion control junk food and lose weight, even though if you had a lot of weight to lose, that would actually get you healthier temporarily.
Momentarily.
Then you still might be diabetic, or you know, I mean, it's just you eat few enough calories, you're going to lose weight.
Yeah.
You know, what did we cover already? Gluten-free,
Blood type diet, manipulation and wordings of low sodium, low fat.
You know, and one of the things I wanted to bring up is that there's common food allergy testing, right? Or like where they test your blood. It's really popularized on social media right now to go self-test.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is like the specific protein that they're testing for is like it's kind of relevant. But the funny thing is, like, if you eat enough of anything, your body's going to produce these antigens anyways.
Yeah.
So if you ate too much chicken and chicken was like a primary protein source in your diet, it's going to say you have a sensitivity to chicken.
Just from
Simply eating it too much.
excess consumption.
So it's looking generally in the wrong.
So do a lot of those tests, I thought I read or heard somewhere that if you did not consume a certain type of food and they're testing for that food, it won't reveal whether you are sensitive to it or not.
It could be possible. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about that, but the silliest part about those tests is that what it's going to show you're sensitive to is usually what you consume the most all the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of worthless overall. Like, you're better off just playing, you know, the old shotgun approach of removing things out of your diet if you legitimately think you're sensitive to something.
Yeah. And I mean, the key is eliminating it long enough to notice a difference, not just one day.
Yeah, exactly. I've had people tell me that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what are some of the habits that are around your the way you consume food? You know, are they doing the old not eat all day and then eat a ton of food at night and wonder why they have a stomach ache?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this gut health is a big deal.
Gut health is a complicated one too, though. You know, so for some people, higher fiber diets are bad, or higher fiber diets are a necessity, and it has nothing to do with the blood type diet, by the way.
Increasing hydration, let alone, will help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, like most irregularity issues when people are constipated generally have to do with just being hydrated. You know, because if you think about it, if you don't have enough water in the intestines to move all the crap, literally, you're just going to be not moving. Now you're not going to have good movement. So
And that's why I have a stomach ache.
yeah, and then bloating can
Not
just be
your
from
stomach.
Yeah, you can have you know, there's a multitude of things that can, you know, result to bloating and irregularity, but generally when people have really bad diets, you know, they're just eating a ton of garbage.
Yeah, just compacting.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what else helps? It's actually working out.
Yeah, mobility.
Yeah.
moving your body.
And in women, sometimes if they have issues with their pelvic floor from having children, that can also be related to digestive issues. They could also be just, some of it is related to insufficiencies of certain bacteria in their gut, but that's a really sketchy one, honestly. Probiotics are a popular thing right now, but the funny thing, in most cases, what the literature is saying now is that what they are more associated with is immune modulation. So they actually help potentially with the way the immune system functions. Not like, hey, I'm going to take lactobacillus and it's going to help me go poop. Like, it's not likely. There's other issues usually that are stemming from that. And then also, I would make a strong argument that the majority of these weird issues that people run into digestive-wise is usually an inconsistency in how they're eating.
Yeah, their eating habits, for more or less. Lack of hydration, stress.
Stress is actually another big one.
Stress and lack of mobility. So, I mean, at the end, move, drink more water, be consistent with your eating habits.
Stop eating so much.
And, find a way to manage the stress a little better.
Stress management, I would say, is severely underrated. You'd be surprised how many people I've worked with over time where simply them making certain changes in their life, like let's say schedule-wise, work-wise, alleviated so much stress that allowed their body to function better. And it's just like, if you're constantly stressing out the body, you're definitely going to have some issues.
Mentally and physically.
And then even yourself, your ability to understand what you're actually doing compared to what you think you're doing is definitely going to be two different things sometimes. So I mean, those are just a lot of the things that kind of all lead from the same issue. And like I said, it's like we go and people try all these specific types of diets mainly because it sounds like it might be the thing that it's going to help them for the first time.
The trending thing at the moment, and in the end, it's still restrictions of certain food groups in total caloric value overall.
I
think we covered
a lot,
quite a bit today.
I think I'm good.
I'll wrap it up.
Well,
we hope you all appreciated that, and if you have any comments or ideas you'd like us to talk about, please comment below. Thank you for tuning in to the Lazaro Lab. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Share to your friends. Oh, it didn't work. Try it like that.
Nope.
I got it.
A little bit.
All right.